Right, moving on now. The Liberian-flagged container ship MSC ELSA 3, carrying 640 containers, including hazardous materials and calcium carbide, as well as over 450 metric tons of diesel and furnace oil, capsized early Sunday due to flooding. Around 100 containers are believed to have fallen into the sea, raising serious environmental concerns. In response, the Kerala government has issued a coastal alert and banned fishing in a 20 nautical mile radius around the site. Aerial surveillance and pollution mitigation efforts are currently underway, with the Coast Guard deploying aircraft and the ship Saksham for oil spill response. Experts warn that the drifting containers and leaked oil could reach the shores of Alapura, Kollam, Ernakulam and Thiruvananthapuram within 36 to 48 hours. Rapid response teams have been mobilized across districts to manage potential contamination, while containment booms and skimmers are being deployed to prevent further environmental damage. Meanwhile, in fact, 24 crew members of the ship which sank off the Kochi coast on Sunday morning have been safely rescued, 21 by the Indian Coast Guard and 3, including the captain, by the Indian Navy's INS Sujata. The rescue followed a coordinated effort by the Navy and Coast Guard after the vessel began tilting on Saturday. Let me quickly go across to Abhinash Mohanty. He's an environmentalist and sector head, CCSIPE Global. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Mohanty. Do tell us, what should be our biggest concern right now? The oil spill, the hazardous cargo, or the drifting containers? Let's begin with this.
Good afternoon, Neha. Yeah, it's a tragic incident. The oil spill is one, but we also need to be cognizant that monsoon onset has begun. And with monsoon onset beginning, what it can lead to is incidents like this will be going ahead in terms of scaling further across the coast. And the simulations by INCOIS and other institutes have put in that this is going to be scaling largely into some of the larger coast. Now, one thing for sure that needs to be constrained or retained is to look at these oil spills do not hamper or hemorrhage the larger marine ecosystem, number one. And this will actually directly impact to the fishing overload that has been happening of late. And this is going to scale up. These is going to be impacting is largely this is going to make it into the larger impact of various ecosystems, not just marine, but also this will lead to the water quality across the region. This will actually lead to a lot of water quality degradation because it has got something very important component across this oil spills that's can happen, the acetylene, and that will pose a lot of environmental hazard not just within the ecosystem but also largely from a different ecosystem. So that's one on the ocean itself. It's going to impact, but at the same time, over these impacts are also going to lead largely into some of the larger ecosystems beyond the cases, and that's where one has to be very cognizant.
Right, sir, but to also tell us, calcium carbide reacts with water. Isn't that dangerous for marine life and the coast?
Yes, that's going to be very, very important because this is going to impact largely not just the life on the ocean, but also the life on the land. Because you never know, a lot of these ecosystems are intersect, and exact dissection of the chemical spill actually intensifies to a larger extent, and that's where the cause of concern actually comes down. So this is also going to affect the land, the ecosystems on land. And on top of it, if there is a heavy rainfall scenario or flooding scenario where the coastal inundation happens, then all of these spillages across the waterland is also going to come down to the land. And that's where it becomes a compounding cascading impact. So one thing we have to be very, very cognizant is the fringe ecosystems and the fringe habitats which have been staying across the coastal areas. And Inquest has already found out that 36 to 48 hours, these are going to hamper some of the major coasts, and that's where it's going to impact largely some of the um, major cause of concern for the life on the land. And that's where it is not just going to impact, but also it would start reacting with some of the hazardous gases. And that's where the water we drink in is going to be hazardous, the air we breathe in is going to be hazardous. So containment of this issue, right, with on a firefight mode, which already has begun, is going to be very important. And one thing for sure, there are few alerts on depressions across the Kerala coast. So those things, if they start plugging in, then it will be an absolute disaster to handle, because it is one on top of the other, and the other on top of the even more further. And that's where it becomes a larger issue to begin with.
Also, Abhinash, oil and debris could hit Kerala shores within the next 48 hours. What kind of damage are we really talking about in case that happens?
If it actually happens, then the damage that we are talking about is going to be threefold. One is going to be damage across the marine ecosystems. B, it is also going to be around some of the larger life on across the coast. That's the second damage that we are talking of. Third, what is going to happen is the soil quality is going to degrade, the water quality is going to degrade, and these all will have a cascading compounding impact, not immediately might be, but after few months to that we are talking of, few weeks to start up. It depends on how much of the hazardous materials like acetylene and calcium carbide, so on and so forth, are going to actually exacerbate. And the degree of exacerbation is going to depend or tell us how much of impact is going to happen, and to what extent the livelihood, the loss of livelihoods, the loss of lives, most importantly, the degradation of the environment and the ecology around there is going to be looking at that we are looking at. And if this intensifies, then it will intensify to a larger rate, because it is not just going to be dependent on the water flow, it's also going to be dependent on the wind speeds. And all of these are literally uncontrollable factors to deal with. You cannot control how much of rainfall is going to happen. You cannot control what
Abhinash,
is going to be the wind direction.
all right,
Yeah.
Abhinash, quickly tell me, quickly for the benefit of our viewers, and I'd request you to put it as briefly as you can. Are coastal districts like, Ernakulam and Alapura really ready for this kind of environmental emergency?
Well, if I have to put it very briefly, then India's disaster response is very siloed. India's disaster response, we have got very effective disaster response for cyclone, for flood, but when it becomes a combination of cyclone plus flood plus hazardous oil spill like this, the cascading and compounding impact is something that we are not aware of, and that's where the problem lies. If it has to be only one kind of hazard or one kind of disaster, we are very much equipped. Our NDMA and other ecosystems which are already ready, or the institutional mechanisms that we have are already ready. But what we are not ready is one after the other, how this disaster actually lead to a cascade compounding impact. So if the COVID numbers are also rising, if I have to put it in an example way, if you have got diabetes and BP and COVID, then this situation becomes very bad. So similarly, managing disasters at a cascading compounding impact is something that we need to really get onto it, really revamp our whole disaster response system, emergency response systems, and make especially these fringe areas or districts more and more equipped, both the system as well as technological format. And that is going to be a challenge. And of late, unfortunately, because of climate change and other factors, these are cascading on one over the other. So
Right.
you literally do not have a control. to manage first what and to address what later. That's where the conundrum happens and begins.
Right. Thank you so much, Abhinash Mohanty, for joining us with all of those important insights. We also have a couple of reactions coming in. Let's quickly cut across.
On 24th May at 12:15 hours, we received a distress call from motor vessel MSC ELSA 3. It was Saturday and the crew were off. Indian Navy deployed 2 ships, INS Satpura and INS Sujata. INS Sujata arrived at 1900 hours on the scene and Satpura arrived at 2000 hours. The situation that we faced at that point of time, the challenges that we faced were that we had adverse conditions. We had wind speeds gusting up to 40 knots. We had debris in the water. We had containers in the water, which made approaching the ship, and particularly at night time, very difficult. In the evening, 21 crew were rescued by ICGS Arnvesh. This morning, the remaining 3 crew, that is the captain, the first engineer and the second engineer, were rescued. All 3 were administered first aid. They're all safe now. At this point, I'd like to only state that we were prepared for every contingency and we are in the business of saving lives, and we have delivered and achieved that today. Thank you.
Can you explain the weather?
The weather, wind speeds were about 40 knots. Sea state was about 3 to 4 knots. Swell height is about 2 to 3 meters. There was debris in the water. Visibility was very poor because of the monsoons. In spite of that, in these adverse conditions, we were able to achieve this rescue. Successfully rescued 24 people.
The present status, today morning, the Indian Navy ship Sujata rescued 3 of the crew, which is the captain, the master, the chief engineer and the assistant engineer. They were on board the ship since yesterday. So today it was felt that if they stay put more, it was a danger for them. So they had to abandon the ship, and the crew was rescued by the crew of INS Sujata. Other than that, the rest of the crew were rescued by the Coast Guard ship and a merchant ship. So the 21 crew have been brought to Cochin by the Coast Guard ship. As of now, 2 of the Coast Guard ships are involved in the pollution response activities. The ship has been changed into pollution response configuration. One of the ships, Saksham, is already in the area, and the other ship, Samarth, will be proceeding to the area to augment the pollution response activities. And the Indian Coast Guard Dornier is also on task for the pollution response activities.